Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're jumping right into the complex, highly detailed CPT Coding Guidelines for Coronary Artery Bypass Grafting, or as we all know it, CABG. If you've ever leafed through the cardiovascular section of your coding manual, well, you already know it's heavy enough to use as a doorstop, right? It looks like an absolute maze of interconnected numbers and exceptions. But don't worry, we're going to extract the core logic from those guidelines and transform it into a super straightforward framework to make your coding process incredibly smooth and accurate. Let's get into it. Okay, so think of a bypass as essentially a circulatory detour. When a surgeon creates this detour around a blocked artery to get that blood flowing back to the heart, they can't just build it out of thin air. They need specific construction materials. And in our world of medical coding, it's precisely those construction materials and exactly where the surgeon gets them from that dictate your entire coding logic. It's not just about the fact that a bypass happened, it's all about what was used to construct it. To keep things simple, we've broken this explainer down into 5 key areas. 1. Decoding CABG surgery codes. 2. Vein-only coronary bypasses. 3. Combined arterial venous bypasses. 4. The rules for graft harvesting. And 5. Your key coding takeaways. Starting with Section 1. Decoding CABG surgery codes. The detour materials. Medical coding can totally feel like reading a phone book sometimes, but there really is a distinct, beautiful logic to CABG codes once you know what you're looking for. The crucial point here is that you have to categorize your coding based entirely on the graft material. Think about it like a major construction project. You can't price out a new bridge without knowing if you're building it with concrete or steel. In our case, CPT guidelines are explicitly divided based on whether the surgeon used strictly veins, a combo of arteries and veins, and exactly how and from where they procured those vessels. Try to code a CABG without identifying the material first, and you're pretty much guaranteed to take a wrong turn. Moving to Section 2, Vein-only coronary bypasses, standalone codes. Let's start with our first major bucket. Bypasses that strictly use venous grafts, with absolutely zero arterial grafts involved in the detour. Sticking with our construction analogy, this is like building your detour purely out of concrete. Notice the beautiful progression in this sequence. If you're dealing with a vein-only procedure, the CPT manual makes it incredibly easy to scale. You simply increase that last digit based on the total number of grafts. So 1 venous graft is 33510. 2 grafts is 33511, and so on, right up to 5. Take a look at that bottom row, though. If the surgeon performs 6 or more coronary venous grafts, you cap it right there at 33516. It's just a clean, progressive scale relying entirely on the graft count. Now, we've got to pause here for a second because this is where a lot of folks make a critical error. The guidelines explicitly state that these vein-only codes stand completely alone. If the procedure involves both arteries and veins, if they used both concrete and steel, do not touch that 33510 through 33516 code block. No way. If you try to use these codes for a combined procedure, your claim will absolutely be kicked back. They are exclusively for when veins are the only detour material used. Section 3. Combined arterial venous bypasses, the 2-code rule. Let's see how this builds when the surgeon uses both arterial and venous materials during the exact same procedure. Notice the strict equation here. The coding manual is very rigid on this point. Combined grafts never use a single code. They always require a pair. You literally cannot accurately report a combined CABG without assigning 2 distinct codes to capture the dual nature of those materials. Just to really cement this critical differentiator, if it's a vein-only detour, you report 1 single code from the sequence we just looked at. But if it's a combo, you must report 1 combined venous code from the 33517 to 33523 range, plus the appropriate arterial graft code, which usually falls in the 33533 to 33536 range. You are essentially billing for the venous portion and the arterial portion as a tightly linked pair chained together to tell the full story of that detour. All right, Section 4, Rules for Graft Harvesting. Where did it come from? So now that we've mapped out the bypass materials, we have to tackle the harvesting rules, because it isn't just about what material was used, it's about where the graft came from and how the surgeon actually retrieved it. You have to ship those construction materials to the site, and that drastically impacts your final coding. Here's a massive red flag straight from the guidelines. Think of the primary bypass code as a standard kit in a box. Procurement of the saphenous vein graft is already packed inside that box. It's included in the base code's description. Same goes for procuring most arteries used for grafting. The standard work to get those vessels is baked right in. Therefore, never report standard saphenous vein or standard arterial procurement as a separate service or co-surgery. But what happens when the surgeon has to look elsewhere for materials? Well, finding and capturing those exceptions is exactly how you optimize a claim. For example, if they harvest from the upper extremities, you report code 35500. What if they harvest a femoral popliteal vein segment? For that, use 35572. And if they rely on an endoscopic video-assisted approach to harvest the vein instead of an open cut, you absolutely must add the add-on code 33508. These specific secondary codes are so crucial for capturing all that extra, complex work that falls completely outside that standard saphenous harvest box. It's a similar story for arteries. While most standard artery harvesting is included in the base codes, if an upper extremity artery, say the radial artery, is procured, the rules change. You have to report that separate work, and the technique really matters here. You'll use code 33509 specifically for an endoscopic harvest of an upper extremity artery. But if the surgeon opts for an open harvest instead, you're going to use 35600. Again, these are billed in addition to your base bypass procedures to account for sourcing those unique materials. Oh, and we definitely can't forget the rest of the team in the OR. If a surgical assistant is the one actually procuring the arterial or venous graft, the guidelines instruct you to append modifier 80 to the appropriate bypass codes. This just makes sure the assistant's specific, hands-on role in the procurement process is accurately documented and, of course, properly billed. Finally, Section 5, Key Coding Takeaways, Securing Your Claims. Let's wrap up this explainer by pulling all these detailed guidelines into a simple, actionable framework you can use every single day. If you follow this basic conditional if this, then that logic for every single CABG operative report, your coding will be incredibly accurate and totally resistant to audits. Step 1, determine the construction materials. Step 2, assign either the standalone vein code or the two-code combo. Step 3, scan that operative report for where the grafts were harvested to catch any reportable shipping exceptions. And Step 4, check the technique, like endoscopy, and note who actually performed the harvest to see if modifier 80 applies. It's that simple. So armed with this structural logic, I highly encourage you to look back at your recent cardiovascular claims. Ask yourself, are your bypass claims fully optimized? Have you been accurately capturing the intricate detour of every single bypass? Are you maybe missing add-on codes for upper extremity harvests, or accidentally using standalone codes for combined procedures? Master the materials, master the harvest rules, and you will absolutely master CABG coding. Thanks for hanging out with me today, and keep up the great work.